Yeah, it can be really daunting sometimes, just the thought of like, okay, I'm going to become Muslim. There's all these rules that like, I'm not used to all these restrictions and my lifestyle is the total opposite. Will I have to switch overnight or in the matter of weeks or months? And, I guess the best advice you can give is to, remind someone that it's a process, it's a journey. Women's confidence in themselves in terms of stepping into making their own decisions and having conviction in those decisions so that they can live their truth as opposed to living a life where the focus is rather on making others happy. I see myself as like a bridge. I just want to be that bridge for people who are sincerely seeking and searching and need support. It's just about women being in whatever area or whatever stage or struggle of faithful practice that they're in, to closely support them and mentor them towards achieving their personal, unique goals. Then it's not you who's in control, right? So you want to be someone who is in control of your thoughts and emotions as opposed to someone who is easily hijacked by what they're exposed to.
Today's guest is from Australia. She is the founder of developingdiamonds.com.au. The website says that they are helping Muslim women to renew and rebuild their faith and identity. She has 12 years experience in teaching, 100 plus speeches, 1,000 plus students from her community, and 20 plus engagements of speaking with the community. She's a teacher and a coach. Welcome, Calisha Bennett.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Alaikum salam. Peace be upon you as well. Thanks for
nice,
joining
nice
us on
to
the
be
show.
here.
Okay,
yeah, alhamdulillah, nice to be here. Thanks for the invitation and look forward to our conversation today.
Yeah, you're very welcome. You're very welcome. So you can see on the screen, for those who are watching this on YouTube, this is Calisha's website. So maybe Calisha, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. So I am a born Australian Muslim. My background is that my dad is a revert to Islam, Australian revert, and my mum is from the Cocos Islands. A lot of people say, where on earth is that? Basically, it's slightly under Indonesia. My parents met early on in life, and my dad was introduced to Islam through my mum and her family. And then, alhamdulillah, my dad converted to Islam. He himself was already on a journey of seeking the truth and wanting to know who God was and have a deep understanding of who God was. And after looking into different religions, alhamdulillah, Islam managed to answer all the questions that he'd had. So it was exactly what he was looking for. They journeyed on through life and raised us. We grew up in Western Australia with our families in a moderately small, moderately practicing Muslim community. And alhamdulillah, now I'm involved in a lot of different community work, and I've always been quite passionate about our Islamic identities, about dawah work. I think coming a lot from seeing my dad's passion for Islam. I was always reading, my parents were always watching lectures, and they were really motivated in their Islamic learning journey. So that being modeled in front of me, it really impacted my own thirst and desire to understand Islam, to practice it as best as I could. But then also there was a deep drive to share that with others. So now, alhamdulillah, I've spent most of my adult life dedicated towards teaching it to whoever I meet or whoever is in need of learning about the faith, whether Muslim or non-Muslim or anyone from any background, basically. I established Developing Diamonds to give focus on strengthening the Islamic faith and identity of my Muslim sisters and young people. So, I'm able to service Muslim women of different ages and backgrounds, and even non-Muslim women sometimes who might want to know the basics of Islam. I have also taught, free online intro to Islam sessions as well. So I mix the work up a bit with free, paid one-on-one coaching, workshops, courses. I take ladies away for retreats. So I do a little bit of everything in whatever way I can reach the community and sisters to remind them about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and about the beautiful blessing that we have in this faith and its teachings. If I can just remind others about the beauty of that and call to that then I feel like I've lived a life worth living, inshallah.
Yeah, that's great. That's excellent. So it looks like when I surf through it, it looks like it's sort of designed for mainly for Muslims.
Mm-hmm.
How would people who are non-Muslim, who are interested about becoming Muslim, how will they
Yeah.
benefit from this?
Yeah, so I guess if someone just basically wanted to have a conversation with me to learn a little bit more about Islam, they just get in contact. Otherwise, some people might be like, I've been learning about Islam, but I'm not sure yet. They might want to have coaching sessions with me to kind of help them to kind of process the way through their struggles with knowing whether Islam truly is for them and whether they're sure about, how ready they are to step into it or what might be holding them back. Because often, I'll meet women who are like, I love Islam, I love its teachings, and I know I believe in it, but I don't know how my spouse will cope, or my family will cope, or my friends, or my workplace. So a lot of what I do in supporting the faith and identity is actually helping to improve women's confidence in themselves in terms of stepping into making their own decisions and having conviction in those decisions so that they can live their truth, as opposed to living a life where the focus is rather on making others happy. And it's too common now where women will deny their own realities, deny their own wishes and aspirations, deny their own truths to please others around them. And that's really unhealthy in the long term. You lose yourself in that. And I love the process of helping women to kind of step into their own and make their own decisions. And, in Islam, Almighty God says that, there is no compulsion in religion, and truth stands out from falsehood. So just in that way, if a woman wasn't Muslim, she wanted to learn about the faith, I'm very much about just, well, here's what it is, and this is your journey, and I'm just here to support you in that journey. And the door's always open to those who want out the faith. But my biggest thing as well in strengthening the faith and identity is in the retention of Muslims who do become Muslim, or Muslims who do start to practice the fact that there's a massive struggle with those who might convert to the faith, or those who might start practicing the faith from previously not practicing, and them being consistent in that.
Yeah, yeah. And you mentioned about how you would help someone with their family coping. So
Yeah.
if this was someone interested in becoming Muslim, and then they had to cope with this issue of how will my family deal with it. So what are sort of some of the things that that a person who wants to become a Muslim will have to deal with, and how would they deal with it?
Yeah, well, there's massive diversity in the journey of someone reverting to Islam. And, I spent over more than a decade working closely and supporting closely convert sisters. And a lot of them are still till now some of my closest friends. And I think the biggest thing is there's no black and white journey when someone enters Islam. And some of the mistakes that I've seen in the journey is, if they're ready to sacrifice everything for this newly found truth and belief, but then those supporting that person, or those around that person, based on whatever community they've entered Islam through, whatever mosque or organization they've entered to Islam through, if that community isn't trained in how to even advise or support this person, often what they say is like, now you believe in Allah, you're part of the ummah, now this is, we are your family, we are the ones that, that matter more, and your Muslims are, closer to you, your Muslim community is closer to you than your blood, which of course these things are all true. But then what happens is the person is then led, now I've got to totally disrupt down a mountain of Islamic literature and say, you all need to read this, because if you don't, you're all damned to hellfire kind of thing approach. There's so much diversity in the way that we're supposed to approach the journey of a revert or a convert person. It's very delicate, and it's very unique. So because of that, it's got to be case by case support. There needs to be a lot of wisdom in advising or supporting a person who might, be saying, okay, my family's not going to take it very well, or my family is totally open. There are so many different scenarios, then issues can come up. So it is a very kind of push and pull, bit of a tightrope situation where there's no one set, path for any person who enters to Islam. It's going to be interesting, and if someone goes through a very easy journey, an easy transition, and their family is supportive, that but it's not always the case. And the support needs to be there for that person in terms of helping them to navigate it in a way that their family doesn't feel threatened, that their family still feels acknowledged, that their family doesn't feel like they're, being rejected or turned away from. So yeah, there's a lot we could kind of discuss in that area.
Yeah. I think this is one of the big things that people sort of worry about is, how will my parents, respond? How will my friends respond? And even once they've become Muslim, what's happening now? People are acting differently around me, or I'm acting differently around people. So the support that your website and your service could give would be a great option for someone who really needed that extra help.
Yeah, definitely. I guess I'm most passionate about holding space for my Muslim sisters or people who are looking into Islam, just for women in general. So, and what holding space means is that whatever it is they're going through, number one, I never will carry judgment. I will never carry expectation, and I'm uniquely there for them in that journey in a way that they need me. There's no agenda. There's no burden of them feeling like they aren't good enough, or that the struggle that they're in is so shameful. I think we have too much in this world and within our communities, too much judgment, too much pressure for people to be or act a certain way or to be at a certain level. And I think we lose a lot of sincerity when we're in those types of environments. So the way I like to teach, to support, is in a way that holds you wholly capable of navigating your journey. But sometimes you just need to lean on someone during that, or to ask for a bit of advice, or to ask someone to help you, get access to some deeper knowledge about a certain topic. So I see myself as like a bridge. I just want to be that bridge for people who are sincerely seeking and searching and need support. They can, utilize me as a bridge to get to where it is that they want to go, in terms of having a better relationship with their creator and a better experience of being a faithful, dedicated and practicing Muslim.
Okay. And tell me about your private Facebook group and the coaching sessions. Can you tell me the difference between them and how someone will benefit from them?
Yeah, so I have like a private Facebook group, and I have a WhatsApp group that's for women who want to see have some issues addressed a little bit more intimately. So there might be common questions or themes coming in. I'm like, I'm going to create a video and I'm going to talk to the ladies and address this issue with them. So within the privacy of a WhatsApp group, a ladies only WhatsApp group, or a ladies only Facebook group, it's just got that little bit more element of intimacy with it, because as we know these days, sometimes videos can go viral, and some of the issues that we address for Muslim women can be really sensitive and delicate. So even the coaching, one-on-one coaching, or I have group coaching programs as well, it's just about women being in whatever area or whatever stage or struggle of faithful practice that they're in, to closely support them and mentor them towards achieving their personal unique goals of improvement. And I think that's how we help people to empower themselves. I don't give anybody empowerment, and I'm not really keen on that word, to be honest, but I feel like we have the strength within us already, and sometimes we just need support to be able to see that strength and bring it forward, for us to really have conviction and confidence to practice or to implement what it is we really want to from our hearts. So yeah, I like to just provide that encouragement, or to be able to point out the potential and abilities that women have that maybe they're not seeing.
Yeah, this the topic of having good role models and proper mentors and teachers is very important, especially with your path to Islam, because there's a lot to learn. Which brings me on to the next point of your on the screen here. We can see it says on your website the free to download the free 10 steps to strengthen your Islamic identity ebook. So I'd just like to go through some of those points now, and maybe you could relate them to someone who is interested in becoming Muslim.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so this is the free PDF that you can get off your website. It's the 10 steps to strengthen your Islamic identity. So let's maybe take about a minute or less for each one, and just tell us how that a person who is interested in becoming Muslim, or a new Muslim, how will they how do these relate to that person? So number one is, who are you?
Yeah. So the first one, probably a very important question when we're looking at the topic of identity, to ask ourselves, like, who am I? Like, do we actually ask us? So to be able to understand who you are, you need to know where you've come from and why you're here. And ultimately, within the Islamic tradition, we learn that we are here, we are created by God as a test, and a test to see who is best in intentions, deeds, and morality, and to live a life where we are in service of God. That the purpose of creation is nothing except to worship God through all that we do and all that we endeavor to do. So that journey of understanding, okay, I want to improve my identity. Well, who are you? If I said to you, who are you? How would you answer that question? A lot of people struggle with that. If I was to say, who are you, write it down in a couple of sentences, you probably need 10, 15 minutes to really think about it. But that's something we should know instantly. So it kind of just raises the question to lead into the set of tips that we have in the ebook.
Okay, actually, this is step number one. Study the Quran.
Oh, it is step one. There you go. Yeah, so step one is to study the Quran. And that's what I always, in one of my signature programs called Own Your Identity, the way to know who you are is to find out who God says you are. And you find those answers in the Quran. A lot of the time when people are looking into Islam, their purpose, it feels like God's speaking to me, and it feels like I've found myself through what I'm reading in the Quran. So it is the number one place to go with knowing who you are, how you're supposed to live, what your potential is, what to avoid, what to be more in life. It's the ultimate instruction book to build you into the best possible human being you can be.
Okay, great. And step number two, to work on your inside.
Yeah. So step number two is to work on your inside. I put that tip, people think, okay, I need to improve my faith. I want to improve my identity. So then step one is to look more religious on the outside. And it's so, so important to make sure that you're doing the inner work, that you're checking in with your relationship with your Creator, purifying your heart, repenting from sins, establishing a greater connection with your Lord, through deeper connection through your acts of worship that you do. That when you read the Quran, that you are connecting with the words that you're reading and internalizing it. That when you do pray or you do supplicate to God, that you are really mindful and tuned in while you're doing that. So to give the inner part of who you are focused before you start, or whilst you're starting to work on the outer practice.
Yeah. I think this is the inner aspects of Islam are truly the most important. And when from the outside, before you become a Muslim, you might look at Islam and you might think of all these things that you see from the outside, like all the prohibitions and all of these things that you might see.
Regulations.
When actually the actual engine, the whole thing that's running it, is what your heart is doing. And so
exactly.
This is Islam, actually, the inside.
Exactly.
We have to do the outside, but I think this is the most important part.
Yeah, starting on the inside, because too often the damage that we see done in our communities is because those who outwardly look religious haven't done the inner work, and their state of heart is not good or not healthy, and they actually cause more harm than good, but look religious on the outside. And sometimes even those who convert to the faith, they get so much instruction of, this is what you need to do now, this is what you need to do now, do, all this external change, but the internal, that strength of connection of their heart with their Creator hasn't been given the same due attention or the time to really cultivate. So what happens is, quite often with converts, is there's convert like burnout after a couple of years. They just burn out because the inside hasn't evolved at the same pace or rate as the external practice. So
yeah, this is what I found when I first started practicing Islam, is that all of my inner characteristics changed. Things like getting angry, getting emotional, worrying, all of these things, when you can flow all your energy towards the good and your Creator and to God, it becomes easier to control all of these inner negative emotions.
Yeah, definitely.
So let's look at step number 3. So we talked about the outside, and then the next is the, sorry, we talked about the inside, the next is the outside.
Yep. So now is to work on the outside. And of course, a lot of people say my faith and practice is in my heart, my sincerity is there. That's what matters most. So then they spend their lives not really doing a lot of outward worship. It's very important to remember that if faith is truly in your heart, then it will manifest through your actions. And that just as much as our faith is growing within us and we are, establishing a more sincere connection with the Creator, a purer heart, more purified intentions, stronger morals, it also needs to, be shown externally as well in physical worship. So just as the heart is worshipping the Creator and devoted to the Creator, now the body needs to be in service and devotion to the Creator, and you do that through acts of worship. And Islam has, a myriad of options of ways you can worship Him, and certain elements of those acts of worship are mandatory, and there are plenty of other ones which are optional, which you can add to your life and ultimately build a beautiful lifestyle of worshipping the Creator through so many different methods and ways of practice.
Yeah, you mentioned the optional worship. And then, so I think one of the things that causes doubts in people's mind is all of these things that I now have to do. For example, now I have to pray. I have to stop doing some things. I have to, all of these restrictions. What is your advice to someone who starts having these doubts when they're thinking about becoming a Muslim?
Yeah, it can be really daunting sometimes, just the thought of like, okay, when I become Muslim, there's all these rules that like I'm not used to all these restrictions, and my lifestyle is the total opposite. Will I have to switch overnight or in a matter of weeks or months? And I guess the best advice you can give is to remind someone that it's a process, it's a journey. And we have people who are born Muslim their whole lives and they're still are in that journey of trying to unhealthy or wrong or sinful actions or environments as they can. So it's a process and a journey, and God is most merciful and forgiving, and you take it at your own pace. What's easy for you, you do as much of it as you can, achieving that area of practice or abstinence. But be kind to yourself is probably the biggest one. Know that if your intention is there, that's what God accepts. So if there's, for example, someone might love their Friday nights out drinking, and they're like, hey, but I also love the teachings of Islam and I want to become a Muslim. How can I stop these Friday nights drinking? Set the intention that ultimately I absolutely want to stop these Friday nights out once I become a Muslim. How you navigate that week by week as it comes, you will be accountable to God for that. So again, be sincere in that journey, and you just try your utmost best, and that's all God accepts from us.
Yeah. Okay, and so step number 4 is to keep good company.
Yeah, this is really, really important. You've got that saying of show me your friends and I'll tell you who you are, or that you're the sum of the 5 people that you spend the most time with. In the Islamic tradition, we have something where the Prophet, peace be upon him, said that he related the environment or the people that you hang around with to the blacksmith or the person who owns a perfume shop. You're going to take the traits and qualities of them. So, if you're someone who is seeking to be more faithful to God, more moral, more spiritually focused, to be in more, devotion and obedience to God, you've got to make sure you're around similar people, because it's, a massive means of either strengthening you or weakening you. And we all ultimately know this. This is why the concept of peer pressure is such a big thing. And it's not just something that happens when you're young and in school. It happens as adults too. We fall into peer pressure and we take the traits of those we hang around with. So really important to keep good company. And sometimes that doesn't mean dropping old friends. It just means finding some new ones to spend a bit more of your with, until gradually you, kind of change your circles over time.
And have you had any experience of, people not being able to deal with, what's happened with their lives and with their friends, and trying to make new friends, trying to make new Muslim friends?
Yeah. I'm not going to downplay and say it's so easy once you choose. It's easy, we're not going to paint it like it's this, a path of rose petals. It will be challenging and you will be tested. And God says in the Quran that, do you think you'll be left to say that you believe and you won't be tested? He will test you in your belief. But ultimately, again, that sincerity of your relationship with God, the conviction on you being a grown adult, making your own choices, living the life that you choose to live, and not caving into the expectations, pressures, disappointments, bullying of others who might not agree with your life choice. So yeah, it will be difficult at times, but if you can use the Islamic guidelines for how we interact with people, even with our with enemies, or even with people who disagree with our stance on things or our life choices, there's etiquettes to that, there's wisdom in that, there's an ability to be emotionally, psychologically resilient so that you don't kind of lose yourself to those struggles and battles. There's a way to navigate through that, and again, keeping good company, having a good knowledge base, looking after your mental health, and being supported is really, really important through teachers and mentors.
Yeah, correct. I think as you progress more, you will start to gain more friends who are Muslim, and then you will experience what Islam is through those friends.
Absolutely. Yeah, from strength to strength. And remember, it's like yes, it's an uphill journey, like it's like a staircase, but one step after the other, like one challenging situation after the other, and each obstacle you overcome, you will build strength. And you remember that whenever a good way to see things as well is like whenever there's a hard situation in front of you, God never gives us more than we can bear, is what we learn from the teachings of the Quran, as well as there's always a lesson in every situation. There's always a greater good, and everything is from God's wisdom. It's a very big concept that we learn in Islam, trusting in God and understanding God's decree, that even hardships and hard times are part of his decree, but they're always for ultimately a greater good. There are lessons in it. There's strength to be gained from it. It will help you to sort those around you who are sincere and who actually mean well for you, from those who maybe don't wish well for you and who do want to, kind of break you down and not see you really thrive and prosper.
Excellent. So step number 5 is?
Yeah, number 5, beneficial influence. So again, look at the information exposure that we have around us, right? Advertising, media, newspapers, social media, our smartphones. We are bombarded with influence through everything that we're exposed to, books, movies, all those sorts of things. We need to really choose those wisely, as opposed to just by default, or as opposed to, oh, well, it's entertaining or it's my downtime. We should be making sure that what's coming up in our newsfeed, or what it is that we're reading, are things that are going to build us up, give us, a higher vision, or knowing that we're here for a bigger purpose, to not be distracted by non-beneficial information or information that causes doubt or speculation. To really put in your way of influence positive sources of learning, and even entertainment, or your downtime, right? Choosing what you watch, what kind of movies or TV shows you watch. You have to choose them wisely. They're shaping ultimately your mindset, your identity, your psyche, whether you realize it or not. These are all sources of influence upon our identities.
That's right. Yeah. And the closer you want to get to God, then you have to make what your environment is. You have to make it in something that God loves. And so when you're in that environment, then you get more chances to come closer to God. On the reverse, if you're going into bad influences and bad environments, then of course it's going to be harder for you to find what you're looking for.
Yeah, it's either calling you to God or away from God, and it's either strengthening your faith or weakening your faith. So you look at every situation, everything that you expose yourself to, or every even friendship or an event or an outing. Is there something in this that's going to awaken, my consciousness of God, or is it something that's going to call me away from it?
Okay, it's an interesting thing at the bottom here about music. So, what will someone who just converts to Islam, what will they have to do about their music?
Yeah, so the music topic is something that people often struggle with. They're like, well, how? Like, music is my vibe. Like, that's what, helps to pick up my mood. This is what, I love my music, people will say. And again, we remind them, it's a process. It's a journey of now just trying to be more conscious. Like, okay, let's have a look. Let's look at some of the lyrics of some of the music. Let's really be critical of, for example, music clips, especially these days, like the modern pop music and some of the type of music that young people are listening to is really, really appropriate. And ultimately, these types of things are, again, taking us away from the awareness of God, from being moral people, from keeping our desires in check, from being people of higher vision. Again, music is a big influence to that. It changes your mood. So if listening to music can change and switch your mood and what you're thinking and feeling, then it's not you who's in control, right? So you want to be someone who is in control of your thoughts and emotions, as opposed to someone who is easily hijacked by what they're exposed to.
And if there's someone who wants to be a Muslim, but they don't want to stop they don't want to stop alcohol, and they don't want to stop their music, what do you suggest for them?
I suggest for them to still enter into Islam, be sincere in wanting to get closer to God, and ask God, pray to God, and say, God, if these things, if these things aren't good for me, I trust that you say they're not good for me. Give me the strength to leave them for your sake. And God willing, He will give you the strength, even though they're things that you do or that you like and you cannot imagine being able to have the strength to stop them. Ask God, turn to Him. He's the all-powerful, and He can change our hearts from what we think we love to it becoming something that we're not interested in at all, or that we despise.
Yeah, that's 100% correct. So what I experienced in my conversion was that I decided that I started to realize that other things were more important than others, and the priority of music every day came lower and lower, because the love that I was getting from seeking knowledge of Islam or praying to Allah or meditation and this sort of thing, the priority of that became so much higher, and I didn't care about the music anymore. I still love music,
Yep.
but other things became more important
it gets bumped right down. Yeah, it got bumped right down where it's almost irrelevant now. So that's the goal.
And now I enjoy the Islamic music. They have beautiful singing, they have some drums accompanied to it, and I get my music thrill, what I'm seeking from music. I can get it from the Islamic music.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's look at.
So step 6 is giving back. One of the greatest ways to feel fulfilled and contented in life is to give others what you either wish you had or what you've been blessed to have. And part of your faith and identity being improved is being able to help others with theirs. And for me personally, that's basically why I do what I do. It's what helps to keep me on track, reminding others about the Creator, reminding others about the blessing of Islam. I only have very basic knowledge, thanks to God. But when I teach and remind others, or I'm able to speak to others or support others, it helps me really more than perhaps the person. So if others are involved in giving back and sharing with others little things that they've learned, teaching someone a little supplication or a part of the prayer, or helping in a charity project that with something that they perhaps struggled with at some stage in their life. This is what can really help to build your sense of faith and pride in your identity. Like, wow, this is what our faith teaches us to do, and reminding others about it, it will just help to do that for you yourself.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, this is what I also experienced, was that interacting with the Muslims, I noticed how they're always trying to help you or to do something good for you. And just by interacting with this, you start to do it. And then when you start to do it, you feel the benefit of it, and it's something that you want to do all the time. And it's
exactly. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, God Almighty says in the Quran, He says, Hal jaza'ul ihsani illa al-ihsan. Is there any other reward for good except more good? Like, just share the goodness, spread the goodness. And Islam is such a faith of service and giving and contribution. And the researchers on which religious community are the most charitable, and alhamdulillah, Muslims are right there at the forefront. It's part of our tradition that we are people who are always giving and sharing and being hospitable and helping others. And if that's the physical practice of Islam, the teachings of Islam, and we worship God through those acts of service, what an amazing way to be able to boost our faith through that.
Yeah, yeah. And there's also been scientific research about people who are sick or depressed or something. And if they go out and try and do something for someone else,
Yeah.
this sickness or the psychological problem, it decreases or goes away. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's an amazing way to address issues like depression and yeah, having conditions like that.
Okay, step 7, read, read, read.
Yeah, step 7, the first commandment, of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, in the cave of Hira through the angel Gabriel, when he was, first given words from the Quran through the angel Gabriel. It was Iqra, read. And we Muslims, this should be part of our tradition for how we learn. It is through reading, and whether you're reading the Quran or reading books or reading articles, it's so important that we are people who are attached to the written text. Now we're living in times where people are we're all consuming visual content. It's all videos. It's all flickering images. It's an image-based generation of learning that we have now, unfortunately. But we have to stay tied to the tradition of being a text-based, people, because this is where true knowledge and wisdom pen, and He commanded it to write, and everything that would just that being in our that is in our story, that's from the start of creation to the first revelation to the Prophet Muhammad, is knowledge and learning. And so we should be so hungry and thirsty for that, and using a lot of our time for that and dedicating our time for that. We can't grow in faith unless we know, and we can't know unless we're reading.
For someone interested in becoming Muslim, what sort of things should they read, and where will they get it?
Yeah, so we'd always say to read the Quran, an English translation of the Quran, and you can access them pretty much from anywhere in the world. You can just, for example, Google the word free Quran, and somewhere local to you or even overseas will find a way to send you one. If you can't, you can always get online versions, PDFs, apps. There's access to it. So yeah, definitely to read the Quran, to read literature which is based on introducing Islam to you in a way that is easy to read, easy to digest, understanding what the 5 pillars of faith are, understanding what the 6 articles of the Islamic belief are, and learning a little bit about the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and his life, because part of being a Muslim is the testimony of faith, which is to believe that God is the only one worthy of worship, and that the Prophet Muhammad is his final slave and messenger. And a lot of people often they're like, yeah, I know God, I believe in God and his oneness, but I'm not sure about the Prophet Muhammad. I need to learn about him first. So I'd encourage people to get literature, or you can watch a lot of different things online. Go to a reliable website such as your website, brother, and just start investigating.
Yeah, the website we have is called ontoislam.com, and there's just a few articles there about converting to Islam and so forth, so you can check that out.
Yeah.
Step 8 is finding decent role models, we talked about earlier.
Yeah, definitely finding decent role models, or even finding mentors. As you can see on the page, that's estimated that up to 95% of human behavior is learnt by looking up to role models. So it's really important to have individuals that you meet along the way that you see yourself in them, so that potentially you're like, I could be like that person one day. And what that does is it instills within you a sense of hope and self-belief, that if you have conviction, in the journey or the path that you're upon, that you're able to then believe in yourself enough to carry yourself through the tests, the trials, and the hard times. Also, finding decent role models is also about learning about Muslims from the past, learning about the lives of the different prophets who are the best lived example of being faithful to God. Again, the life of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, he exemplified how to live the Islamic teachings, the morals, the state of heart, the humanity, the character. When you see his life and you see how he was as a human being, you realize like that is the potential for the quality of person that you can become if you live according to God's guidelines, which we know as the Quran and the Sunnah being the practice, the speech, the behaviors and approvals of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him.
Yeah, the way I learned the most in my experience was to actually learn face to face with someone. Like there's only a certain amount you can read from a book. You can get a lot of knowledge from a book, but there's some things that you can't get from a book. For example, trying to imitate the way someone is. If you look at, you're talking to someone and you can see that they truly love something, right? So in our case, they truly love God. And you, by just seeing that love and the way they are, you will, something in you will try and copy that, and you will try and be like that person. So these role models is very important if you want to, if you want to get closer to God.
Definitely. And I think we need more role models in our communities. We need more lived examples. And that was part of why I stepped into the work that I do. And I'm a bit more public and outspoken within the work that I do. Previously, I was never online. You would never be able to find a photo or video of me. And I wish I could still have that, but I realize the times we're in now, we don't have more visible public figures, especially role models for Muslim women and young girls. We can't, and how can we complain about them following incorrect role models when we aren't putting out positive role models for our girls and our women to learn from, or to see as a living example of, I wouldn't mind to become someone like that, or to have knowledge like that, or to speak about Islam like that, or do those types of community projects. So it's really important that we do have role models.
Yeah. And now that we have the internet, only yesterday I was speaking to a brother, Saeed, from US, from Kansas, and he told me his story. He converted to Islam. There used to be Muslims in the city, and then 3 years ago, they all left for some reason. The mosque closed and they all left. So, now what does he have to do? He has to virtually connect with Muslims over the internet. So he uses Facebook and this sort of thing. So his story was quite amazing. But so these role models, if you can't find them in your locality, then you have to search for them online.
Yeah, and, exactly. And you can find them online. You can find that connection in the digital world as well. Some of my favorite mentors who I've been able to connect with and learn from are women who live halfway across the world. Like the world is small now, because of the World Wide Web. So there aren't any excuses to say, I can't find anyone to support me, or I don't have anyone to look up to. You just need to look, and, within time you'll find someone.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, step 9.
Yeah, step 9 is to have honor. And I'm someone that tries to remind people about the importance of values. And I do a lot of workshops and programs where I introduce the concept of people really looking at what their values are. And something that's missing that is impacting the state of faith and identity within our Muslim communities globally is we don't feel honor in being Muslim. We don't carry enough honor and pride in knowing who God is, in the fact we have the Quran, which is a heavenly book here on earth. Like, we don't have honor in that we have guidelines and a way to live our life. We have a formula for the ultimate journey of success in this life and the next. And, I always just try to remind people about have dignity and honor in being Muslim. And I remind them of that through different verses of the Quran, where God says that he, honored mankind, the son of Adam. Just the fact that we're human beings is a source of honor. And then being, God mentioning that we're the Khalifa, we're the vicegerents, the caretakers, the leaders on earth. Again, we have so much honor by default that we're born with, but we need to be reminded of that to start to feel it and identify with it, so that then we can march forward with actually practicing our faith and standing true to our practices and our religious teachings and principles. Because if we have the faith, but then we have shame because the world is saying this or that about Muslims, or people call us names when we go out into the street, we're going to have this inner conflict. So we're going to have, the seed of faith within our hearts, but then we are what's called, I teach a lot about it too, the internalized depression, where you start to agree with what your oppressors are saying about you. You start to feel ashamed and embarrassed about being Muslim, about praying in public, about wearing the hijab, about having a beard, about not shaking hands, or about wearing modest clothing. You start to feel embarrassed to be different. And, it's really important to be reminded, have honor, live with honor, and don't be shy or ashamed of what you've been blessed with by God in the Islamic faith and teachings, and in being a human, a high quality human being at the end of the day. That's all we want to aspire to be.
Yeah, true. Yeah, this is how I felt as well, that anytime there was a test in front of me, that God put there, that I had to make a decision. Whenever I chose the choice, which was to do it for God, then suddenly it just all became easier. And, some of those things that you were talking about, and having to, not worry about other people and just, have honor in yourself and your religion and your God. This is truly important. Okay, number 10, don't compromise.
Yeah, number 10 is don't compromise. Like, don't compromise your principles, don't compromise your faith, don't compromise your identity. Like, be true to yourself, which is ultimately, hopefully, you're being true to your Creator and what He expects from you. And there's nothing that God calls to or that He forbids that is ultimately bad for us or bad for humankind or bad for this world or this planet. So we need to have, again, the honor, the conviction in what it is that we believe in and stand for, and don't compromise, don't bend, don't change because of the judgment or the hardship or the pressure that's put on you by those around you. So again, just to have a strong sense of resolve to give up on the truth that you have found, and not to let what we know as Shaitan or the devil and his whispers to create doubt within you. Self-doubt is a big one, or death, or the value of the Islamic teachings. Just don't compromise. Like, don't give up on what you are ultimately aiming for, despite the struggles that might come your way.
Okay, you mentioned the devil. So what is the Islamic perspective of the devil, and how does it affect us, and what should we know about this?
Yeah, so we believe in the concept of the devil, and that ultimately, or originally, he was a worshipper of God he wasn't an angel, he was what we know as the jinn, which is a being or a creation made from a smokeless flame. And, when God created Adam, the devil, we know he was named Iblis, was jealous of the creation of Adam and upset by the fact that God commanded the angels and Iblis to bow to Adam, because this was now a superior creation who was going to be, again, the vicegerent, the leader on earth. And since that time, because of that jealousy, Satan refused to bow to Adam and made an oath to God that he was going to mislead mankind from the path of truth. Why? It's out of pure jealousy. So he wants to try to show God that, see, the human beings are not superior, and try to make it that he is superior. So the battle ensued from then, and God gave him respite until the day of judgment, and human beings are on earth until the day of judgment. So there is a battle there, and we believe the devil is an unseen creation, but he comes to the hearts and he just whispers. The only power ability he has is to whisper suggestion to cause us to fall from the path of being true and obedient to the Creator. So we just try to be aware that any evil inclinations that we might have, or suggestions, that they are from the devil and his plot and plan to take us off the path of fulfilling our purpose successfully.
Okay, so it says shine bright. That's the end of the PDF. So this is probably a good idea for anyone interested, even for Muslims, to download this PDF. And it's a good reminder for you.
It's a little light read, but you're good to have conversations about it, or just reflect on in your own life and journey.
Okay, so we'll have to wrap it up here. Can you give us your final advice to anyone who's thinking about accepting Islam and becoming Muslim, on what should they do, or any advice you have for them?
Continue learning, or if you haven't started learning, start learning. Make sure that the sources of your learning it's very, very important to know the sources of your learning are authentic. So get advice in that. You could contact Brother Adee or myself and ask what are some good sources of learning, or some good websites, because there is a lot of, as we would expect, dodgy websites out there, and falsely made literature to try to distort the actual truth and message of Islam. So just be aware of that. So start learning. Second thing I'd say is to get some support. So to find some Muslims who have some, number one, very good character, and who also have some knowledge to be able to gently guide you as you are involved in your learning, or to direct you towards Islamic teachers or scholars that might live in your local community that you can continue or start to learn from. Often a lot of major cities around the world will have intro to Islam type classes, or basics of Islam type classes. So it's always good to start learning and being supported in that learning journey. And number 3, I'd say most importantly is, if you're considering or you're on the fence about becoming a Muslim, to ask God sincerely to guide you to the truth. If you are sincere in that, like, oh God, guide me to the truth of who you are about my life, about, guide me to the true faith, which is going to be most pleasing to you and lead to my success in this life and the next. Just ask God for that, all right? And if it's Islam for you, then God will guide you to that. For us as Muslims, we believe that it is the answer and that it is the ultimate truth. But for you who is feeling unsure, just be sincere in asking God, guide me to what is true about my existence, about who you are, and to a way of life that is most pleasing and the best for me. And then hopefully God will make things easy for you in your journey ahead.
Yes, I hope so too. Okay, Calisha, thank you for joining us.
No problem.
Thanks for joining us on the show. And what's the best way for anyone to contact you if they want to?
So feel free to just find me on the different social media platforms. Just look for Calisha Bennett, or you can also email me, calisha@developingdiamonds.com.au. But yeah, pretty much easy to find and easy to contact. I haven't seen someone with the same name yet. So just look us up and reach out if there's any way that we can support you or help you in your learning journey. We've got lots of free content, free online courses as well on the introductions to Islam. You're more than welcome to benefit from some of what we have to offer.
Okay, Calisha, once again, thanks for joining us. And
no
hopefully
so
in the future you can come on again and talk again.
Absolutely.
So may peace be upon you. And
you
also
too.
to all our listeners, peace be upon you too.
Yeah, peace be upon you all. And thank you so much for having me on the podcast.